We'll bring in Steve Gardner, a great writer, covers baseball for USA Today. Good to always jump on board and catch up with him. And certainly, Steve, when first and foremost, always appreciate it. You know, when we talk about it is a rarity where you get a player playing for one team their entire career. I mean, it's certainly a rarity, is it not?
Oh, for sure. And I think we'll hear a lot about that coming up at the All-Star game, because it being in San Diego and Tony Gwynn will be a large presence there, in the fact of how he was Mr. San Diego. So, yeah, there are very few of those guys, and Tony Gwynn was one of them.
Yeah. All right. I want to let's start with the Phillies right now, and because they're right in our backyard. Look, they're playing good baseball. I know they're still a young team. The bottom line is, I think, from a whole, if you step back a little bit, if you're a Phillies fan, it gives you a little optimism to watch this team throughout the summer. I'm not saying they're winning 80 or 90 games, and even if they win 70 games, I think that's a good season. At least you kind of know the direction that they're going. What's impressed you the most about this Phillies team?
Oh, just the fact that they've been able to put together some really good stretches of baseball, and the fact that the starting rotation, some good young arms there. I think we just saw Zach Eflin coming up and having a really good start his last time out. I think that bodes very well for the Phillies. And, you know, the minor league system is producing some guys that have a lot of talent. Those guys come to the big club, you know, in the next year or two. And I think the Phillies are making probably a quicker rebuild than most people felt like they'd be able to accomplish.
Is that because of, and again, to be fair, is it also the NL East is not the best division right now, and you're playing the likes of Miami and Atlanta. And I said I think you have to dismiss that, because you can only play who's on your schedule. But they showed a little gumption taking 2 out of 3 against the Royals. They did sweep the Arizona Diamondbacks. They did salvage that set against San Francisco. So I guess, does the truth lie somewhere in between, or you think that they do have a nice little core of Franco, of Herrera, and those guys where they can win some more ball games going forward?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as you said, it's only, you can only play who's on the schedule, and there are several teams in the National League that are rebuilding. So you're going to get some of those games, even when you're not playing well, against teams that are considerably better. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think, you know, we've seen. They didn't keep Ryan Howard in there at first base for the entire season. We've seen Tommy Joseph basically turn into pretty much a regular player now, and starting to pay some dividends there. And once Cody Ashe gets, is healthy and gets back on the field, he's shown some signs of life. And then when you start getting guys, when Peter Borges starts playing well,
sure,
and Maikel Franco has not really had a great year, at least the one that I thought he'd take a quantum leap maybe ahead this year. He's only taken a couple of steps forward, but there's still a lot of potential with him. So, yeah, I think this is a team that's certainly moving forward, and looks like a team that should be one to be reckoned with here in the next, maybe next year, probably in 2 years.
When you look at the Mets right now, putting Harvey on the DL, 15-day DL, if I'm a Mets fan, I'd have to be beside myself, because I'm like, okay, what's going on? Is it between the ears? Is it the shoulder? Is it the arm? Is it the innings pitched? Is he laboring too much? Is it a mental thing? Did he just lose his fastball? I mean, it's just like I'd rather them just come out and say, okay, it is what it is. Here you go. But instead, you're not getting that. And how much longer? You can't really depend on Cologne. I mean, but more or less, it's been a really, I know they say shoulder discomfort. It's been a really rough year for Harvey. I thought this was the year where you were going to see Harvey win 20-plus games.
Well, the thing is, Rich, I felt from the beginning of spring training that because the Mets were almost to a point last year where they were going to ease off on all of those young starting pitchers and, go to the six-man rotation and everything, and then all of a sudden they got into the playoff race and had to put the pedal to the metal and lean on those guys, all of them, not just Harvey, but Syndergaard, Jacob deGrom, Steven Matz, that was something that they were going to have to pay for that in 2016. And I think that's kind of, if it's not a direct cause, it may be an indirect cause of some of the struggles that those young pitchers have had. Harvey, really, when you look at some of the underlying numbers, it's not a whole lot different from last year. The walk rate is up a little bit. The strikeout rate's a little down. But in terms of some of the non-luck measures like fielding, independent pitching, his numbers aren't that much worse than last year. So I don't know. I think the health has got to be the issue. That's the big difference between Matt Harvey of 2015 and 2016. And I think it's the case with several of those Mets pitchers. So it's the point of, do you go for it and you push all your chips to the middle of the table, or do you kind of hold back a little bit and continue to play for year after year after year and being competitive? The Mets decided to go for it last year, and I think it's the price that they've had to pay.
And they're going to get the production from Cespedes. You lose Wright, but Flores has played admirably. I mean, he's got 3 home runs. I think 3 home runs in his first 50 games of the season. Now 2 multi-homer games within the last 4. But you're right. I mean, they also are snake bitten with some injuries, and it just happens. And conversely, their crosstown rival, you look at the Yankees. I mean, you got an $85 million player in Brian McCann, and he's got to sit against lefties. I mean, look at the contract, look at production. I shake my head. The same with Ellsbury. Ellsbury had a monster year in 2011 with the Red Sox. Then a couple years later, he signs with New York. He hit 16 home runs, and the last 2 seasons combined, 10 so far. I mean, to me, he's just been an absolute disappointment. I don't know what it is sometimes with these contracts, and some of these players come to New York. It's the old, the whole Jeremy Benitz from many, many moons ago. I mean, I look at this team, and you were dead on. You told me they were going to be a bad team. Age was going to catch up to them. All those contracts are going to catch up to them, and that's exactly what we're seeing this year.
Well, and they had everybody pretty much stay healthy
that's right,
for the most part last year, and that's why they were able to accomplish what they were able to. And when you have a roster that is that old and that experienced, you can't expect that to happen every single year. So that's kind of where the Yankees are at this point. And the way that the Yankees have always operated is they get free agents, or they make trades for guys who are at the peak of their careers, and there's nowhere to go from there but down. And I think that's what we've seen with, Ellsbury is one of them. McCann is another. Carlos Beltran, maybe the one
best player
that bucks the system a little bit. He's had a great year this year, so you have to give him credit for it. But still, the majority of those guys have not had good years this season, and the Yankees have suffered because of it.
Yeah, and we talked about the power surge last year from Teixeira and Rodriguez, and obviously both are off injured, and age starting to catch up with them, and you see where the numbers are this year. And I know that the White Sox were asking the Yankees about Gary Sanchez. To me, I hate to say untouchable prospect, but in your eyes, is he an untouchable prospect right now for the Yankees?
I think any prospect that the Yankees have that has a major league future has to be pretty close to untouchable right now, just because that's the only way that you can rebuild the team and get it back onto solid footing, and not having to keep doing the quick fixes and the Band-Aids every single year. Brian Cashman has tried to do that, and he's having some small little successes, bringing in Starlin Castro, Aaron Hicks, guys like that, but those aren't difference makers. And if they can get some of the guys up through the farm system, like Greg Bird looked like he was going to be last year, but then he got injured and misses the entire season now. So it's what Cashman has tried to do, but it's a painstaking process, as Phillies fans are well aware. Any team really is well aware. If you're trying to rebuild and get those younger guys in, it takes a little while. Yeah,
and you mentioned Beltran's having a great year, even though he's coming off with that hamstring injury. He'll DH today. I want to get your thoughts on a couple teams. Cleveland. I thought Cleveland would be a sleeper team. I thought they would be a dark horse, and I know a lot of people had a lot of writers, not yourself, but had Terry Francona on the hot seat, and they were thinking about, hey, all right, we'll start to groom Sandy Alomar Jr. to replace him. He's managing his tail off. And when you look at some of the numbers that Santana's putting up, Napoli's putting up, Salazar, his pitching lights out. You got Cody Allen close to 20 saves. I mean, did you see this coming with the Cleveland Indians this year?
I thought that they would be good if Michael Brantley was going to be a full-time player and was healthy coming out of spring training. That has not been the case, and yet they've still been much better than I think most people anticipated. The reason, it's just that pitching staff is so good from 1 through 5 that they've been able to carry the team when the offense hasn't really been able to produce. But Cleveland number 2 has also improved defensively immensely from basically the time that they called up Francisco Lindor last year to play shortstop. This was a bad defensive team all around until Lindor came up, and now they've gotten much, much better. They added Mike Napoli in the offseason. You talk to any Indians player, they will tell you that his leadership in the clubhouse has been huge for them. So that's another guy that they added to the mix this year, a guy that Terry Francona certainly is familiar with from winning a championship in Boston. So, and Napoli's had a great year, and he stayed healthy. So I think that's been one of the, another key to the Indians' success. And when you can trot out a Kluber, Salazar, Carlos Carrasco, Josh Tomlin, Trevor Bauer any day of the week, you've got a chance to win, and I think the Indians have taken advantage of that strength and parlayed it into maybe the best team in the American League right now.
They're playing very good baseball in the AL. Conversely, a team that's not playing good baseball, the Angels, and you just have to start to wonder, when is Mike Scioscia's time up? And again, he's been there a long time. He's won with them. I know he won that power play with Dipoto, but kind of a different regime right now with Epler, the new GM. I'm starting to think, okay, as a GM, you're never going to be in a better position to make a move if they don't show signs of life, especially in a tough division. And I look at this team as a whole. They haven't won despite the fact that they have a huge payroll and the numbers that Trout's putting up year in and year out. So where do you see Scioscia? I mean, is he making it through the season?
I think he probably will make it through the season. Now, whether he continues after that, I think that's a PR kind of thing. If they're going to look to make a change, they need to find a way to let Mike Scioscia bow out gracefully. But it seems like this may be a situation where a change may be something that will work for a team, just because it's a different voice. You look at the roster and how they're trying to build that roster. There are not a whole lot of parts around Mike Trout that are really complimentary. They're pretty much roster fillers, replacement level guys. They did have Garrett Richards lost for the season at the beginning of the year, their ace, so that was a huge loss. But they still need to be able to put better players in everyday spots than they are right now. And if ownership is not willing to spend money, they don't have any farm system to speak of, probably the worst in the majors. And so there you go, another rebuilding effort that looks like it's going to take a long time, and they may need to just tear it down completely.
Before I let you get out of here, I'm just curious to get your thought on this, because I know you're like a historian of the game, and I like talking old school with you. Everyone's talking about the Cubs and their infield and the All-Star selection. It could be the best infield ever for one season, and then people are starting to compare them to the Mets infield way back. I was laughing the other day. I was like, this is not like the 81 Dodgers with Yeager and Say and Russell and Garvey and those guys. Is that just basically bar talk right now with the Cubs infield, or are they really built for the long haul here?
I think, they may be the best infield in the game right now, although I think a lot of that was popularity. Addison Russell is not the best shortstop in the National League. Ben Zobrist, I could think of Daniel Murphy, for instance, in Washington, that probably should be starting at second base for them. So, it's the fact that the Cubs are getting a lot of attention because they're playing well as a team, that gives the individuals a lot more. At the corners, though, you're hard-pressed to find guys that are better than Rizzo and Bryant. So I'll give them that. I think it's a little bit too soon to talk about them on a historic basis, certainly with some of those teams that you mentioned. But certainly they're getting the job done. And, Joe Maddon loves to shuffle his guys around. I think that's one of the things that makes the Cubs so good is they don't have to have every single guy play 162 games, and they get some rest during the season.
Yeah. Again, I'm not going to put them right up there with the 99 Mets, but We'll save that for another day.
Yeah.
All right, listen, always a pleasure. Great insight, great follow on Twitter. Definitely check out Steve Gardner. Does a great job covering baseball for USA Today. Steve, I always appreciate the time, pal.
Thanks so much, Rich.
All right, you
always
got
enjoy
it.
talking to you.
Thanks. Take care of yourself. Steve Gardner, very good follow on Twitter, at Steve A. Gardner.